Ahmed Kaballo is the CEO and founder of African Stream. That's a Pan-African digital media organisation. He's also a Sudanese journalist. Appreciate you coming on, Ahmed. And it sounds like it's a dire situation in the country when you have representatives of Saudi Arabia and the US saying it's close to the brink of collapse. Are they being literal there? Are things really that dire?
There really are. 190 children have been killed, 1,700 have been injured, over 500 people have been killed, close to 5,000 wounded. We have 1 million polio vaccines that have been lost. 70% of the hospitals in the capital are not operating, but there's no blood in the blood banks for people to get blood if there is surgery. Children are dying because of a lack of oxygen. Bodies have been left in the street, which is causing contamination to the water and the air. The water that people are drinking is not clear, is not clean. My father is currently still in Bahri in North Khartoum. Every time I call him, I can hear gunshots. It's a really real dire situation. 300,000 people have been internally displaced, 100,000 externally displaced, and the UN claims that figure could go up to 860,000 because Sudan hosts 200,000 refugees from other countries like South Sudan. Many of those refugees are starting to go back. And, some countries are not living up to their responsibilities. We've had reports from people being turned back from Egypt, people being turned back from Ethiopia. So it's a really dire situation. And the Sudanese people need the fighting to stop. And unfortunately, these truce talks in Jeddah does not give us much hope, because firstly, the representatives of both parties won't even sit down together. So they're indirect talks. The army has said that it will not sit down with this rebellion force. So it's indirect talks, firstly. Secondly, they're not talks to end the fighting. It's just about humanitarian corridors. So to allow aid in and to allow people that want to leave to be able to leave. It's not about bringing about a settlement that will stop the fighting. And what we've seen from the previous ceasefires is every single one of them have been violated. As the representatives headed to Jeddah, we saw smoke and firing and bullets raining down on the streets of Khartoum. So, I pray, and we have to be optimistic, because if we don't have hope, what do we have? However, that's my heart speaking. My head says that we shouldn't put too much into these talks.
And if I can just ask you very, very quickly, Ahmed, what's the solution to this terrible picture you've painted? I mean, does it need the US to somehow intervene and pressure both sides?
Well, the problem we've got is the Rapid Support Forces is being supplied by General Haftar and the UAE, and the Sudanese army is being supplied by the Egyptian army. So while we still have arms flooding into this conflict, then the fighting won't stop. Unfortunately, both sides believe they've got the upper hand on the other, but in reality, no side has the upper hand. The Sudanese army is around 150,000, and the Rapid Support Forces is around 100,000, and they're fighting in urban centres. So this fighting, I can't understand how either side think they can win this victory without tens of thousands of lives being lost. All fighting comes to an end at some point. So it needs to happen now before those figures of 550 plus, is probably underreported, go into the thousands. Unfortunately, because we're dealing with two military figures that have huge financial interest in Sudan, I think they won't stop the fighting until those interests are protected. Now, what are those interests? Well, General Hemeti controls the largest gold mines in Sudan. Many of those gold mines have been sold to the United Arab Emirates. The Sudanese army, which is led by General Al-burhan, controls all of the major industries in Sudan, the financing, the car manufacturing, the agriculture. And what they both don't want is a transition to civilian rule. And what the fighting does, it makes people weirdly nostalgic about military dictatorship, because Sudanese people are starting to say, some of them, not all, well, at least under Bashir, we weren't, having to leave our homes. So what they're both doing by prolonging the violence is they're creating a situation where the transition to democracy looks like a pipe dream, because all people want now is the fighting to stop. The idea that we want civilian rule seems so far further away now than it's ever been.
bringing us some really great insights, I think, into the situation there in Sudan. Appreciate your time, journalist Ahmed Kaballo, my guest. Thank you.